All right, welcome back, everyone. We are going to head right into the third panel of the third annual virtual TSM conference, Redefining Recovery. I'm Jenny Williamson, Executive Director of the C3 Foundation, and I am so glad you've joined us if you're just tuning in. This conference is available to view and to participate in for free thanks to our two co-headline sponsors, Work It Health and RIA Health, and our panel sponsor, Deerhaven Gardens. If you'd like to support the work of the C3 Foundation, there's a donation link in our profile, and we have a timer that will also drop a donation link into the chat during the broadcast. Also, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to to live tweet our conference with the hashtags Redefining Recovery and Options Save Lives. It's a great way to amplify the impact of our conference. Our next presentation comes from Michael Novia, who had to record her presentation, Alcohol Use Disorder as a Poor Coping Skill, in advance of the conference. Michael Novia helps women manage and overcome anxiety, depression, trauma, grief, using present-centered, future-forward positive psychology for optimal self-care. Additionally, she's trained in EMDR and somatic therapies. Sarah is the co-founder of Alcure, a premier TSM-based wellness/telemedicine company. Sarah can be seen treating celebrities and discussing pop culture psychological issues on VH1, CNN, CBS, E, A&E, and on many radio shows and podcasts. Sarah is available for remote sessions by phone or video, licensed in California, Connecticut, and Montana. Sarah and I did do a Q&A, but because of time constraints, that video is going to be released after the conference as bonus footage, first to our Twitch subscribers and our hero supporters, and then to the general public.
Alcohol abuse disorder as a poor coping skill. Hi, I'm Michael Novia. I am an MS, EDS, LPCC, BH, TMH, which basically means I went to school. I went to Florida State for mental health counseling, and I became a licensed professional clinical counselor in California. And the BCTMH is actually the newest term for board certified telemental health, meaning that I can do remote therapy. I'm also the co-founder of Alcure Wellness, which is a telemedicine group dedicated to providing services, the Sinclair method services, to people discreetly and from online. So my main question that I ask new clients is if they find themselves drinking a little more than they'd like to. In general, in my private practice, I tend to treat women, and they're women who are in the workforce, and they come home and they have a glass of wine when they get home, before dinner, while they're making dinner, during dinner, maybe after dinner. And they get to the point where they realize they're drinking a little too much or a little more than they used to, or an uncomfortable amount, or maybe someone has said something about their drinking. It could be gently, could be less than gently. And so I start off, most women who do seek me out as a counselor are looking for a little help with, I've been drinking too much. I'm not certain if I'm an alcoholic. And the general answer is you don't need to be. You don't actually need that diagnosis. What you really need is to know that you have an alcohol use disorder, meaning you're using alcohol in a way that is not necessarily beneficial or healthy for you. So couple of notes, there can be a genetic component to alcohol use disorder. So you can say my parents were alcoholics, or my grandparents were alcoholics, or I noticed that other people in my family drink way too much. Maybe I have that gene. And the answer is you might have that gene. But what we have found through a lot of research is that drinking is typically more of a learned behavior. And so while your parents may have been alcoholics, that is definitely contributing to you having an alcohol use disorder, because you saw that behavior modeled for you. So what I find is that individuals from heavy drinking households and zero alcohol households, as in your parents didn't drink at all, so you didn't have a modeled behavior of what appropriate drinking might look like, they're far more likely to abuse alcohol as adults. And traditionally, many daily drinkers witness drinking as a model behavior from adults in their lives. And I have some examples here. If your dad poured scotch when he walked in the door after a hard day at work, your mom drinking the bottomless glass of wine while she's cooking dinner to tune out the stresses of raising children and managing a household. And so, what I really want to make clear is that behavioral learning cements itself as a poor coping skill. So, rather than figuring out other ways to deal with stress, it's super easy to just say, oh, it's the end of the day. I'll just have a drink and relax. And that's generally how it starts out for most adults who find themselves with an alcohol use disorder. I also want to point out that AUDs tend to have traumatic origins. That's not necessary, but it is, in my experience, especially from a counseling perspective, once we start to uncover why the AUD is happening, some traumatic origins tend to find their way out. Many people drink because they find it enjoyable or it's what everyone else is doing. So that's sort of a starter, right? You're going to parties when you're younger, everybody's doing it, and it feels good. It tastes good. It feels good. It's a vibe. You're in, you're like, this is awesome. The problem is when there's a traumatic experience is that we often feel how drinking and alcohol and drugs block out those feelings of a traumatic experience. Sometimes it may not even be a traumatic experience that the person is aware of. It can be a traumatic experience that's been blocked from the memory completely. But once that alcohol and drug use gets on a roll and that person is able to feel that or not feel that sense of overwhelming anxiety, perhaps, or structure, right? So that alcohol and drugs obviously can also apply here, but we're using alcohol for this particular scenario. That alcohol can give you that feeling of ease, of relaxation, of forgetfulness, of not having to think about it, of being able to block it out, basically of not having to experience the feelings, the pain, the anxiety that's happening in your day-to-day present life. And I see quite a few women with AUD, and I find that many of them are survivors of sexual abuse, particularly in their childhood and teenage years. That drinking does cover up that said experience, but it doesn't ever, under any circumstances, heal any of it. So it may be making you feel better in that moment, but it doesn't do anything permanent other than continue to increase your need for more alcohol. And symptoms of trauma often grow worse with prolonged alcohol abuse. That's really important because when you're not facing the trauma, when you're not dealing with the things that are hurting you and you're using alcohol instead, in addition to not dealing with them, you're making everything a little bit worse. You may be having health issues from the alcoholism. You may be having social issues from the alcoholism, right? So you're actually increasing those symptoms by using alcohol as a coping skill. I like to point out that AUD can start small. I don't know a single person who has said, I'd really love to have an alcohol problem, right? Most people just are trying to have a good time. And what they don't realize is our bodies tend to adjust to the amount of alcohol we're drinking. That's called our tolerance. And while it might start small, it increases rapidly and sometimes exponentially. So one day you're having one drink, let's say for a year you have one drink when you go out, and then in year two, and this is the slowest form, right? Year two, you say, you know what, I can have a second drink. I can take it. I can still drive if I've had two drinks. I'm under the legal limit, right? There's all kinds of excuses that we can fill ourselves with that make this behavior okay. And also socially, alcohol is extremely socialized in the United States, as is binge drinking, where it's not just, oh, let's have a glass of wine with dinner because it complements the food we're eating. It's, yeah, let's go out and forget about all our problems. Let's go out and have a great time. Let's go get really, really drunk. And that's considered a fun activity. And it's advertised as such through peer groups and through social, activities. So what's really important to know is once your tolerance gets stretched, more and more alcohol is required to maintain that buzz. And the higher that buzz, the more cognitive dissonance you're going to experience. So that's going to be your poor decision making, your memory problems, and for a lot of people, that includes blackouts. I also want to just do a quick note. Blackouts can include brownouts, right? Which is just sort of a blackout is when you have no memory of anything that's happened whatsoever. And brownouts tend to be where you fade in and you black back in, right? So you're like, oh, I remember that part of that night, but I don't remember that. Oh, what did that happen? Did I say that? What happened then? That person was there, right? And suddenly you're unable to remember the scope of an evening because alcohol has blocked parts of your brain and made it impossible for you to remember. And some people do get some of those memories back after they hear about them. They're like, oh yeah, that happened. And some people cannot piece the evening back together. So the other thing that's really, really important here is that when a certain threshold has been met, for some people, there's no turning back. It is a switch that has been flipped. And so but permanently, you can't flip it back off. And it's so important to know that you don't know when that is, when it's coming. So, and here we go. Doctors and researchers have compared addiction to a switch. Some people can drink for many, many years without a problem. Some people develop an AUD immediately. Something I hear more and more often is from especially survivors of trauma is that first drink was a light switch for them, where they suddenly felt like, oh, I can relax. Oh, this tastes really, really good to me. This feels really, really good to me. And so they knew from the first, other people will have a first drink and say, this is disgusting. This isn't for me. They have to get used to it, right? And then other people drink and they're like, yum, this feels like heaven, right? This feels like safety. This feels like comfort. Any of those kind of notions are going to lead toward this may be a poor coping skill for you. Others develop it over time. So there are plenty of people who thought beer tasted gross the first time they had it, and then they started to get used to it, and then they added vodka, and then they got used to that, and now they're drinking brown liquors and back to blackout, right? So it might be your first drink, it might be your 4,000th. There's no way for anyone else to tell, and sometimes even for you to tell, when you've hit that threshold where that switch has flipped and you can't unflip it. And so there's no way to determine which will break that threshold. And once it's triggered, there is no easy way back. As most of you might know, traditional rehabilitation includes a 12-step program. Facilities have been integrating Alcoholics Anonymous for decades. And if that works for you, that's so great. That's fantastic. We are never saying don't go to AA. AA doesn't work. For some people, it's an absolutely essential form of treatment. And having that abstinence and that community is amazing. And we welcome it and we support it fully. Alcure, the company for which I work, and other alcohol abatement companies we're not looking to replace AA if it works for you. Medicine-based alcohol recovery is an additional option, and it's for those for whom traditional programming does not or has not worked. So there are some people who just say AA is not for me. Fine, this may be a better method for you. There's some people who joined AA and had a terrible time in AA, or they joined and they kept drinking and they lose. So a lot of times when you fall off the wagon, you lose that community until you're willing to get back on. And for some people, that's actually socially just devastating because they've created their lives around that AA community and they're falling off the wagon. They're having trouble. They're not sober, and they are no longer included in that community until essentially they agree that they're powerless and they need the community to survive. And then as soon as they're ready to be sober again, they have that community back, which can be really powerful for some people. But for the people who don't know how to crawl back to that, it can be socially and emotionally devastating because you lose those bonds, you lose that community. And then who's helping you with this alcohol use disorder or this alcoholism? And so if you've been resistant to AA or you've joined and left in the past, this can be a better, healthier option for you. And should you wish to continue to drink and not abstain completely, this is maybe the only option for you. right? And so personally, I would love to see this option added to rehab centers, and it is slowly. We are seeing rehabs introduce medicine-based alcohol abatement. It is much slower than I think would be helpful. Same with doctors and providers. Mostly, I have a company that provides this, and we would love for you to call and become a member and use us to get healthy. But what our main goal is awareness of, do you even know this is an option? Do you even know this exists? Because it's shocking to me how many people I meet who are struggling with alcohol in my practice, but also just in my social life, and have no idea that this option even exists. So let's start with some gentle rules for moderating your drinking. The thing that I was so fortunate to have learned as a young person is to only drink to celebrate. So don't drink if you're feeling down, depressed, or anxious. And again, this is for alcohol use disorder. This isn't, if you've hit full-blown alcoholism, these may be a little less helpful for you. This is really for people who are checking their drinking. They're like, when am I drinking? How often am I drinking? Is it more than usual? Is it more than I'd like to? Is it interfering with my social life? Is it interfering with my work life, my family, et cetera, et cetera? So if you're feeling down or depressed or anxious and you're reaching for alcohol in those times, it's possible that you're asking for an alcohol use disorder, because you're saying, I would like to use alcohol as my way of coping with these feelings, instead of saying, what are some other ways that I might be able to manage these feelings? In line with that, don't drink when you're sad, angry, or bored. Don't drink alone. This is a big one. During COVID, an incredible amount of people found themselves drinking alone and increasing their tolerance and drinking more and more. It went from, oh, I'll just have a glass of wine, to, oh, I had a whole bottle or 2 bottles of wine, which is an incredible harm to your physical body, without even the mental and emotional aspect of any of it. Physically, your body is not prepared to deal with that many toxins. And so drinking alone is a really big indicator that there may be somewhat of an issue here, especially if you're, any of the feeling down, depressed, anxious, sad, angry, or bored, and you're like, I'll just have a drink and forget about it, right? That you're developing a poor coping skill when you have those thoughts. Also, and this is so important, do not drink with someone else whose drinking feels problematic. That is a slippery slope for both of you. It is not necessarily your business to tell someone else that that person is drinking too much. It depends on your friendship, relationship, etc. But when you see that actively happening and you join in, you're developing that same set of skills. You're developing that problematic drinking. Again, it may be slowly, or you may be spared, but the likelihood is that you're seeing that this toxic level of drinking is either fun or a relief, or is somehow providing you with some kind of emotional comfort that is problematic and will continue to be. What can you do to curb or stop your drinking? Well, I'm going to go right out there and say, use the Sinclair method. It is such a simple way to say, like, I think I'm drinking a little too much. What is something I can do to curb that? And you can research TSM on the C3 website. You can speak with your doctor, or you can join a discreet community like alcure.me. That's my company. The most important thing, if you want it to work, is maintaining compliance to the treatment protocol. If you don't maintain compliance, it will not work. And then we hear things like, this doesn't work. You told me this would work. And when we do a little more research, we find out, well, you took it in the morning and you didn't drink till 5 p.m. And that's too much time. You're really supposed to be taking it about an hour before you begin drinking in order for it to have the right impact. Also socialize within your community. So many people are here to help and support you. And a lot of times it's really about letting them know. A lot of the feedback / negative interaction that I get is, I don't want to take medication, add drugs to alcohol, right? And I always find that to be like a really mind-blowing option, because essentially you're poisoning your body with alcohol. No matter what, alcohol is a toxin, it's a poison, whether you enjoy it or not. It doesn't take away from the fact that it's 100% absolutely a toxic poison. And so you're willing to put that in your body, and there's no judgment about that. And what we're saying is you can add this drug that's going to neutralize the dopamine feeling that like, oh, this feels really good, right? It's going to neutralize that for you, and it's going to provide you with an opportunity. You still get drunk. You still have a good time with your friends. You're still drinking alcohol. You're not telling anyone you've stopped. And it provides you with that sort of safety of, I can still have some alcohol and also start to drink a little more responsibly. Because when you don't have that dopamine pump, that this feels so good, I need more, I want to have another one, this could get even better, right? When you reduce that by a significant amount, you tend to drink less. And over time, you might even stop enjoying it enough to not drink anymore. But again, we're not suggesting that that's what's necessary. We're saying, let us help you drink less and live better. Starting TSM will give you the ability to learn and work on a new set of coping skills. So you'll finally have the energy and attention necessary to replace the coping skills that haven't been working for you. And you may be able to work through the trauma that may have brought you to or kept you drinking in the first place. This is really huge. One of the main factors that we're leaving out of, especially in 12-step rehab programs, where we're saying, you have to be abstinent, you have to do this, you have to do that. When you are on TSM and you are reducing your amount of alcohol, you're able to create the space for getting help, getting therapy, getting new coping skills. Like it's incredible how much space you give yourself when you're treating the thing that's preventing you from having those resources. And we just can't say that enough, because when you're in AA, you're spending so much time. If you're resistant, if AA works for you, again, please use it. But if you're resistant to AA and you're white knuckling, not having that next drink, that's what you're thinking about. You're not thinking about the things that might be causing you to want that next drink. You're not thinking about the trauma that may have created that atmosphere for you in the first place. You're thinking, I have to do everything in my power to not drink. I have to do everything in my power to not drink. And I have to call people to not drink, and I have to sign up for things to not drink, right? And you're focusing your time and your attention on not drinking instead of on healing. The big three: sleep, healthy eating, and exercise. So I am a therapist. I am not a psychiatrist. Psychiatrists prescribe medication. When I work with someone with talk therapy and they say, I think I need meds, if it is not a pressing issue, there are some people who need them right away, and obviously that should be handled. But if it's like, I'm thinking about meds, I'm not sure yet, my questions are you doing the big three? Are you sleeping? Are you eating healthy foods? And are you exercising? Because if you're not doing any of these three things, medicine is not going to have the impact that you'd like it to have. It may help a little, but it's not going to help the way that it possibly could. You have to get over 7 hours of sleep a night. Some people will be like, you're crazy. There's no way to get 7 hours sleep a night. There's not enough time in the day. There are books and research and everything you can find about how essential that is for your body and for your brain. When you don't get enough sleep, your brain doesn't have enough time to process memories, to process information, to process learning. You lose all of that. There's an amazing book called Why We Sleep. It's a little bit dense, but I can't recommend it enough, because it is a doctor telling you there is nothing you can do in your life to make up for the lack of sleep. You have to get that 7 hours every single night. There's no way to make up for lost sleep. You can't bank it on the weekends. People say, oh, I'll just sleep in on the weekend and catch up. That's not a thing. Your body needs that rest for processing and good decision-making. And there's no workaround for sleep at all. So it's so important that if you're feeling like you need to work on trauma, you need to learn some new coping skills, you need to get help, you need to get support. If you aren't first focusing on that sleep, everything else is going to be just a little bit or a lot more difficult. Healthy eating is next. Whole foods and greens are a must. They should comprise 80% of your diet. In the United States, that is very rare for humans. So it's so important that you see that number. 80% is 80% of your diet, fruits and vegetables and things from the outside of the grocery store, nothing on the inside, right? Not fast food, not bread. Our bread is poison in the United States. I personally mill my own flour and I make my own bread and pasta. People are always shocked at how fresh and healthy and good it tastes and how it makes them feel, because it's not stripped of nutrients. It's not essentially poisoned, right? And then put fake nutrients back in so that you don't get sick from all the nutrients that have been stripped from it. Like, our system is not perfect and it may not even be great for food. So it's really important that you're taking control of that. And that if you are in an area where you have access to fresh fruits and vegetables and you have access to natural flours and anything that you can do to improve that is going to improve your mental health. It's going to improve your ability to manage stress. Also, I recommend limiting meat and animal products, processed food, and sugar. So a lot of people say, oh, some meat is healthy. That's not necessarily false. And I don't even advocate for vegetarianism so much as our factory farming processes in this country are abhorrent, and we don't know what we're eating when we're eating meat here for the most part, unless you are going to a butcher and you are getting a piece of meat that is from an animal that they knew and took care of and treated really well and fed without pesticides and garbage. You don't know what's in that meat. So if I were you, I would stick to organic fruits and vegetables as much as is possible. Again, these are suggestions. You can take them or leave them. But if you're struggling with mental health issues, with alcohol abuse, with any even previous trauma, and you're not eating well, it all just is a little harder to digest, pun intended. And exercise. You need 20 minutes of exercise a day. Absolutely no excuses. If that is walking around your block, if that is doing jumping jacks in your apartment, you can find HIIT, HIIT, that's high intensity interval training videos for free on YouTube. A lot of them are 12 minutes long. That's not even the 20 minutes, but they're high impact exercises, and you can get that 20 minutes in 12 minutes. Fine. That's great. You need to be getting exercise. Exercise is for your body, but it's mostly for your brain. Your brain needs that exercise. It needs that oxygenization. I think that's the right word, in order to process what's going on in the day and in order to improve your sleep in the evening. So please get sleep, eat healthy, and exercise. The other big three, these are a little more emotional. People, place, and purpose. So people, you want to surround yourself with like-minded, health-conscious people to the best of your abilities. Obviously, we don't all have the ability to just do that all the time, but when you can choose healthier people, please do. Please learn from them. See what their habits are. When you meet somebody who says, oh, I exercise every single day, great, tell me about that. Oh, I only eat whole foods. Please tell me more. Give me some of your recipes, right? Try to get involved with people who are already doing some of these things, because it will make it so much easier for you to comply if other people around you are also doing it. We know when someone says, hey, do you want to go to McDonald's? The answer is yes. Of course you do. McDonald's is delicious. It's poison, but it tastes really, really good. So if you surround yourself with people who don't say, hey, do you want to go to McDonald's, and say, like, let's go to Sweet Green, right? Which isn't as exciting necessarily as McDonald's, but you do really get to pick what you want in your salad. If you have those friends, you're going to naturally gravitate toward healthier choices. So when you're making new friends, especially as an adult, try to see, like, does this person live a healthy lifestyle that I want to emulate? Place. Attend events where sobriety is required or encouraged, and avoid opportunities for overindulging in drinking. This seems really obvious, but it's super difficult, especially if you work in an environment that encourages happy hours after work, or everybody getting together for a big party where alcohol is open bar. It's free. It's scary. There are a lot of events in your community that you can find where sobriety is required or encouraged. Things like going on a hike, a group physical activity. There tends to be very little alcohol there, unless it's club sports related. That's definitely an exception. But for the most part, there are events. LA, right before COVID, was actually putting up a whole bunch of alcohol-free bars, which was going to be amazing. And then COVID kind of put the kibosh on that for a little while. Hopefully those are coming back. And that seems like a really fun activity to be able to meet out in a social event. There's mocktails, so you still have that feeling of having a drink with friends. There just isn't alcohol in it. There's also tons of sober drinks popping up that you can purchase online or in grocery stores are all about giving you the feeling like you're having fun drinking with friends. They work. They're amazing. I love them. It's such an easy fix to have when you have a drink in your hand. It's when you don't that it feels like, oh, what am I doing? Is anyone noticing that I'm not drinking? Is anyone making fun of me? Is any right? Like the web just spins in your head of all the things that could be happening that quite frankly probably are not. But when you have a drink in your hand, no one's asking you if you want a drink. No one's asking you, no one's pressuring you to take a shot. Oh, I already have one. Doesn't matter if there's alcohol in it or not. It's no one's business. If you're surrounded by people who also aren't drinking, that's going to be a lot easier as well. And purpose. It is your responsibility to figure out what drives you. Having a purpose for being here makes it much easier to avoid distractions and distracting people. So that's really about doing the work on yourself. I may mention it later in here, but there's a book called The Instruction that I absolutely love. It's essentially a workbook. It takes you through all kinds of scenarios and it helps you figure out why you're here, what you're doing, what your purpose is, and guide you toward, are you drinking because you're not living a purposeful life and you're trying to avoid, right? It's all about like, let's experience this life. Let's not create distractions. Let's figure out why we're here, what our purpose is, how we're helping, how we fit into the whole thing as a society, and work on that. So if you feel like you don't have any purpose, now's the time to start figuring out how to find that. Don't worry, I'll give you some suggestions. Self-care, so important. Shower every day, no matter what. If you have access to a shower, you should be showering every day, even if you don't think you're dirty, even if you don't have anywhere to go. Doesn't have to be a fancy shower. Just get in and let the water run over you. It is so good for your self-care to just rinse off. Get that water on your body. Listen to music and dance to it. Put on anything that you enjoy. I have different playlists for loving, for dancing, for hating, for sadness, right? Like if you need to work emotions out for whatever reason, have a playlist for those emotions. There's no rule that you can't play songs and just cry for a little while. That might feel really, really great to you. Sing or chant. There are awesome chanting videos online. Sometimes it's just one little sentence. You say it over and over again. It's a form of meditation. You can also just do that with a song that you love. Play it over and over again. Love hearing it. Love the words. Love the singer. Just get that enjoyment out of it and get that energy out of you. Meditate. There are so many apps right now that allow you to do guided meditations that are incredible. I personally like Insight Timer. I know there's Calm. There's a bunch of other ones. Most of them are free for some of their services, and then they charge a premium when you want to get a little deeper. The biggest thing that I tell people who are starting meditating is start with 2 minutes. Don't try to do a 20-minute meditation if you've never done it before. Unless you love it, obviously, then go for it. But most people who try meditating for 20 plus minutes the first couple of times hate it. They say it's so boring. I don't know why I'm doing this, right? You just went a little too fast. Start small. Start with 2 minutes, 2 to 5 minutes. A lot of those apps have timers. You can see how long it is. Pick one that's only 2 minutes. Sit, relax, listen to it. Try to listen to it at least every day, even if it's just the same one that tells you you are wonderful, you are beautiful, you are an amazing soul. Whatever it is, just try to do it. Carve out that 2 to 5 minutes a day and just do that. I promise you that if you do that for 90 days, you will want to do a longer one. But if you don't make a habit of it and you just try to jump into those longer ones, they may just be too much. And then it gets frustrating and it becomes another thing on your list that you have to do. And it feels like overwhelming. And We're trying to prevent that. These are supposed to be self-care, not overwhelming care, right? So just take it easy. Journal. Oh my goodness. Please, 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 please write it, get it out of your head and onto the page. I don't think anyone realizes how important it is to not have all those thoughts just swimming around in your head unless he or she has started journaling. Because once you start doing that and you see what it's like, you get just breathe a sigh of relief of, oh God, I don't have to think about it anymore. It's on the page, it's out of my body, it's onto this page. It is such a relief. It can also be on your computer or on a tablet or whatnot, but I do find that that handwritten journaling can be just the most cathartic way to get all your thoughts out. Maybe you have crazy dreams, write them down when you wake up in the morning. That's a form of journaling. Put a notepad next to your bed, wake up, oh, that dream was so crazy. Nobody wants to hear about it. Let me write it down, right? People generally do not enjoy hearing other people's dreams. So have a notebook and write them down so you get them out of your system and out of your body. Cry. I talked about this a little bit with listening to the music. If you want to listen to crying songs that make you cry, great. If you can just cry naturally, great. If you watch a show that makes you cry, great. Let it out. Your body is trying to get rid of that toxic energy. Let it go. It will feel so good after. Clean. This is a big one for people who are suffering from depression, especially, right? Having a clean space makes things feel possible, and having a dirty space makes them feel impossible. It is really difficult to declutter your mind if you haven't decluttered your space. That brings me to Marie Kondo. Everybody's pretty much a fan of her these days. Live with things you love. Get rid of things you don't love, no matter how much they cost or whatever. If they do not bring you joy, get rid of them. Get them out of your space. They're cluttering your mind. They're cluttering your space. Donate items for which you no longer have use. That's right in line with the Marie Kondo. And curate your space. That is as well, right? Like make sure you're surrounded by things you love within your budget, right? We're not trying to get crazy here. We're just saying, oh, I really love plants. Okay, maybe I can get a little plant and see if I can nurture that, right? Plan wonderful meals. This is huge, especially if you're struggling with alcohol use disorder. Having a really delicious meal, a healthy meal with those greens that we talked about, 80% whole foods, being able to plan that is a sense of enjoyment around eating that doesn't have to involve alcohol. And it gives you that space to just say, especially if you can have a meal with someone else, that's wonderful. You can bridge that social gap. If it's just for yourself, that's also really nice. Like I just made this delicious dinner for me, right? That's great too. Those are super, super important methods of self-care. That these aren't like the optionals. These are the things you should be doing all the time. More self-care. These are a little more optional, right? So practice gratitude. Should it be optional? Not really, but you can certainly get on without doing it. It will be helpful to you if you're journaling and you just maybe write 3 things you're grateful for. That's so easy to add in there. Say them out loud when you get out of your bed in the morning, when you're brushing your teeth. Think of 3 things you're grateful for, right? Like just know that there are some good things in your life and you want to really put energy around those good things. That positive psychology. Your strengths, build on the strengths you already have. So what's great in your life? What do you love? Healing affirmations. I love affirmations. Again, back to the guided meditation. You can just look them up and have someone else say them to you / at you, and it works the same. When you hear one that feels really, really, really clarifying for you, that's when you create and repeat your personalized mantra. So you really want to have some words, usually a 1 sentence, really brief, that reframes whatever situation you're in. Mine's super goofy, and it's from when I was a kid. I was a really, really awkward looking kid. And I think I turned out okay as an adult. But as a child, I had very large teeth, and my face was my features were extreme. And it took a little while for everything to adjust. And when I would get really stressed out, one of my friends from my class just said to me, "You're too pretty for this." And I was shocked because I didn't even see any pretty. I just saw features and I thought I looked like a cartoon, and I did. And but that friend could see that it would all settle and be okay. And that meant so much to me because I didn't feel pretty at all. And for someone to say that, it just stuck in my brain as like, okay, I'm too pretty for this. And then that has helped me in my adult life so much when I have felt stressed out or someone's cut me off when I'm driving. Say like, you're too pretty for this. Like, don't, that's not, it's not that big of a deal. And it seems like such a corny little one sentence, but it reframes it so quickly. And for those of you who don't know what reframing is, it's basically looking at the situation from a different perspective. So technically reframing would be, you know, this is a frame, this is a wider frame, right? And so how do you need to look at the situation in order for it to feel different for you? How do you reframe it? So if you're arguing with a sibling, a reframe might be trying to see it from the sibling's perspective or trying to see it from the big picture, right? And so it's so important to be able to reframe right in the moment, because that's going to prevent you from having an overreaction. Acupuncture and acupressure, I'm a big fan of. If things are hurting or things don't feel right or your chakras don't feel aligned, get in there and get those things done. Same with chiropractic and craniosacral treatments, massage, yoga, Reiki. I'm surprised I didn't put Reiki on here. I might have just forgotten it. It might be on a later slide, but tapping, breath work, past life regressions, and tarot card readings. I know some people say, oh my God, you want me to read a tarot? Are you kidding me? That's ridiculous. Or get a tarot card reading. It is self-care, right? So if you flip a card and it gives you some encouragement in a direction for which you're looking, that is just self-care. And same with past life regressions. Some people say, oh, that stuff's not true. That's not believable. That's corny. Okay, if it doesn't work for you, this is the more self-care section. This isn't the required self-care section. But if that's something that brings you enjoyment, feeling like you're learning about some past lives you may have had, why not dive into it, right? And learn about yourself and learn what makes you tick. And maybe it brings you toward your purpose, which was on the required side. Get therapy. Get therapy. Everyone should be in therapy. Find a licensed therapist you love. Psychology Today is my favorite site for that, for finding people who are licensed. Please make sure you're finding people who are licensed. I know that people have had successes with life coaches and with alternate therapies. And again, if you find success with that, okay. But if you are not starting out from a place of success, please go to a licensed therapist and help figure out how to use your strengths to start from that place. Let a therapist guide you to healing and becoming your best self. And look for a therapist who's an expert in addiction and familiar with CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, somatic therapy, and EMDR. Those are trauma therapies that can really, if you are on the Sinclair method and you are, getting your alcohol use under control, and then you can get some trauma therapy and really work on the things that probably caused you to have a drinking issue in the first place, you are going to find growth that you couldn't even have imagined is possible. Also, encourage all your friends to get therapy. My general rule of thumb on therapy is that if you can afford the best therapist, go to the best therapist. Go to somebody who doesn't take insurance. Do what you have to do. If you can't afford it, almost all the time, some therapy is better than no therapy. Yes, there are extreme examples of terrible therapists, but they are few and far between. And some therapy, the main difference between using your insurance to go to a therapist who takes insurance and paying out of pocket for one who doesn't is going to be time. So if your time is money, pay someone who doesn't take insurance. You will go through the therapeutic process faster because that person will likely be more experienced, will likely have more skills. But if you don't have the money and you do have the time, go to the cheapest person you can find or the person who takes your insurance or whatever it is, so that you're getting that interaction with a person who's unrelated to you, who's not involved emotionally or spiritually in your life, and can give you an unbiased workaround for how you can start to manage these issues. Get active. You heard about that 20 plus minutes of exercise. Do it with a friend if you can. Join an athletic group if that interests you. Find a weekly activity, hobby, club to which you look forward. This is so huge. Every single happiness study that has been produced in the past, I think 20 plus years, has said having a weekly activity increases your happiness the most. So it's something that you look forward to, something that you enjoy, that you do every week so that you know that that's coming and once a week. So figure out something that you want to do at least once a week and join that club. Make new friends who don't drink or who drink less. Make plans with those new friends. Plan travel, try new cultures, get educated, read, sign up for a class, right? So this is about learning. This is about growth. This is about finding your passion and finding your purpose. Be well. Plan for your future. This is so important. Planning for your future can involve health. It can involve finances, right? It's all about saying, like, who do I want to be 1, 5, 10 plus years from now? Make those lists and then work backwards, right? Who can I be in this next month? Who can I be this year? Who do I want to be in 5 years, right? And figure out how to make that plan. Enjoy checking things off your list. This is so important for those of us who are list makers. It's so much fun to be able to check stuff off. I always try to add a few sort of freebies in my lists of, like, I know I'll get that done. So I put it in there so that I can watch myself check it off or cross it out. It feels so good. Be impeccable with your word. So important. If you are saying you're going to do something, whether it's to yourself or someone else, do it. Under promise and over deliver. It is one of the best things you can do for your own wellness, is be impeccable with your word, and then also forgive yourself when you can't. Sometimes I encourage clients to make a list of all the things they said they would do and then forgive themselves for the things that they're never doing. Maybe things changed, maybe you don't want to do it anymore, perhaps it was impossible. So cross it off the list and say, you know what, I'm so sorry. I said I was going to do that. I'm not doing that anymore. Make good decisions. When you make good decisions, you sleep better at night. Even if the decision is the better of two poor decisions, the better the decision you can make, the better you're going to be able to sleep. And we know that sleep was on that number one list as number one of the things that you absolutely need in order to function healthy. Forgive yourself when you don't. So if you make a bad decision or a poor decision, it happens. Be able to forgive yourself, apologize to people if you need to, apologize to yourself if you need to. I want you to experience life instead of avoiding it. That's really the whole point of managing alcohol use disorder, is being able to experience life instead of avoiding.